Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. This is another Spawn daily episode. We're continuing our journey, checking out all the Spawn issues of the main series, as well as all the books that tie in tangentially. Just to give you a quick recap of how this all got started. Back in 2022, when it was the 30th anniversary of Spawn, I realized that I had never read the entirety of Spawn. I think I dropped off around issue number 40 of the original series back in the day. Just loved it, but it was coming out, a little bit sporadically. Although I will admit that Spawn came out closer to a regular schedule than any of the other original Image titles. But I was also in college and, didn't have as much disposable income and, that sort of thing. Spawn wasn't the only comic that I dropped off of. But anyway, with the relatively recent issue 300, and, at that time, 2022, 300 had just come out. It was a big push at San Diego Comic-Con. McFarlane was pushing all these new series, King Spawn, Scorched, Gunslinger Spawn. I wanted to read that stuff. And in fact, I picked up those debut issues of a lot of those series and read them and enjoyed them, but I didn't feel like I got as much out of them as I would have if I had all the history and all the context of everything that happened with Spawn. So I thought, okay, great time to go back and reread Spawn from the beginning. I'd probably read the first 10 issues multiple times. But some of the issues up to around 40, like I said, when I stopped, I'd only read once and I hadn't read, a lot of the stuff. And that, I think that's true of a lot of people, right? Like you look at the number of issues that those early issues of Spawn sold, and, it's like a million copies or whatever. But then you've got a good run where the back issues go for just a regular back issue will go for like $100 because the print run was relatively small. I don't have the exact numbers, but I want to say some of those issues were less than 5,000 printed. So again, credit to McFarlane for, keeping his dream alive, for never giving up on Spawn, for believing in it. And various things, new generation being introduced to Spawn, with Spawn showing up in video games and what have you, as well as the hype around the issue 300, issue 301. Established Spawn as the longest running independent comic book title ever, passing Dave Sims' Cerebus. So there's a lot to be said for, longevity and the things that McFarlane and his team and various writers and artists have been able to do over the years. So again, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to dive back into Spawn. And so that's what we did. We started off with the 12 days of Spawnmas in the countdown to Christmas, like we always do, some sort of a 12 days of Christmas sort of thing. And that year, 2021, leading into the 30th anniversary of Spawn, we did the first 12 issues of Spawn. It was a lot of fun, and it really did kind of kick off an interest for me to start reading Spawn on a daily basis. So I thought, okay, at the time there was less than 365 issues of Spawn, plus we'd already did the first 12. So I thought, okay, we'll do it. We'll do an episode a day. We'll try to do it daily, knowing that we have a built-in buffer of about 40-ish because, again, 300 had just come out relatively recently at that time when we kicked it off. Plus, again, 365 days in the year, and if Spawn's only around, 310, maybe it's going to be at 320 by the time the year ends. We'll have plenty of space, right, to get everything done in a year. If I'd only known. So a couple things happened. First off, had a co-host. He couldn't keep up with the daily grind. He dropped off. Got another co-host. He had some stuff happen in life. He couldn't keep up with the daily grind. I really didn't want to do it by myself, and I sort of dropped off of it. Plus, I'm still trying to do the regular other episodes as well, regular audio only episodes. And so it was a challenge. And so I just kind of let it fall by the wayside to my chagrin and shame. And it kind of died on the vine. But before that happened, one of the things I discovered, and I discovered this when we were doing some issues that were post Batman Spawn crossover, right? So in 90, was it 92? Maybe it was 94. It was after Spawn had been out for a little while. Image and DC Comics did a crossover, and they did a Batman Spawn one shot. And, Batman coming first in the title, and DC did that one. They, recruited the creative team, they published it, what have you. And the same year, Image did one called Spawn Batman, where, Spawn had the first top billing or what have you. And they were both interesting, and they both had their pluses and minuses and what have you. Um, but one of the things that happened in one of the crossovers, I think it was in the Spawn Batman crossover, which I want to say was written by Frank Miller. But anyway, regardless of which one it happened in, there was a moment where Batman got pissed off at Spawn and he threw a batarang at him and it hit Spawn like right in the middle of the face and like split his face down the middle. And in subsequent issues of Spawn, Spawn had to basically stitch his face back together with this old shoelace. And there's legal reasons why it couldn't necessarily be um, kind of referenced directly or what have you, but it did. What it showed me was that there were plenty of times where things happened in other Spawn titles, crossovers, miniseries, what have you, outside of the main Spawn title that really impacted and gave context to things that were happening in the main story. So that really made me stop and reconsider what I was planning. Like, if I just do the main series, I'm going to miss out on a lot of other stuff. So sent me down the rabbit hole of internet research and what have you, looked for some Spawn reading orders, found a really great one by this guy named Blake Whitlow that attempted to fold in all the things that talked about when things might not be canon, when they might be, but it wasn't just Spawn. It was Curse of Spawn. It was the Angela miniseries. It was Violator. It was things like Spawn, Batman, Sam and Twitch, all that sort of stuff. And so I was like, yeah, let's go, let's go crazy and really get a full breadth and width of what Spawn is, right? Let's dive in. Let's read everything, knowing that it was going to extend the timeline immensely, right? And I foolishly thought, and again, this was before I fell off completely, but I foolishly thought, well, what we'll do is we'll try to backload it and release more than one episode a day to try to get it done in a year. I really wanted to get it done in a year. I don't know. I mean, again, I guess because it was the 20th anniversary of Spawn that I was kind of focused on that. But yeah, I mean, once the other co-hosts quit and looking at that schedule was so daunting. But one of the things that I realized was that if we always, because it is Spawn and the main series is the Spine series, it is, kind of what's most important. It is sort of the engine that drives the Spawn mobile, if you will. I always wanted to be sure that it's always going to be one issue of Spawn per episode. But when we do other series, I can do a whole story arc in one episode. Or, if it's a really long series, maybe we do 3 or 4 issues. Or if it's a 6-issue mini, maybe we squeeze it all into one. It'd be a little bit of a longer episode. But so that's what I decided to do. Had a whole schedule for the whole year where I would finish in time. And yeah, like I said, to my shame, I fell off. It was too hard to keep up. And it's just beyond like no accountability, right? Because I didn't have other people that were like, okay, they're going to be there at such and such a time to talk about such and such an issue, so you better be ready. Plus the other thing that, and it's one of the challenges still, is that I don't want to release these where you can see all the text, where you can see all the word balloons and what have you, and all the dialogue, because then, in a way, it's sort of encouraging people to just tune in and read the comic themselves. They could put it on mute, which is fine. Maybe you don't want to hear my voice, but then you have no incentive to go out and buy any comics. And at the end of the day, the Comic Source has always been about sharing the love of comics and trying to match up people, even people that say maybe they're not comic readers who don't like comics, but try to match up people that are potential comic readers with the comic that will turn them into a regular comic reader. That's always been the goal. So for that reason, that's why I redact everything, but it does take a lot of time. And so that was another thing that really kind of threw me off. So anyway, that's the whole secret origin of the Daily Spawn. Kicked it off this year, re-releasing all the episodes that I'd released before, plus some new ones. And then again, life got in the way, as it frequently does. So I don't know. I've contemplated whether I should change the name away from Spawn Daily, because I just don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this up on a daily pace. It's been a long time since I've been able to keep up on a daily pace, but I think I'm going to leave it as Spawn Daily for now, because I do really think that it's something to aspire to. I want to make it a daily, so that I can finish within a reasonable amount of time, maybe, halfway through next year, be caught up to the regular stuff. And that'll be a lot easier to just keep up, right? Just read the new Spawn stuff as it comes out and release the episodes. So there's a lot of Spawn content coming this year. Thanks to Todd McFarlane for that. Thanks to Todd for coming on the show. He's been on the show twice already. Hope to have him on more in the future to talk about Spawn related things. Obviously, the big announcement that he's got a new deal with Marvel to produce some diorama-like figures of some of his most iconic art and some of the other most iconic art for Marvel is really exciting. He's got a Kickstarter that's coming for Medieval Spawn. That's amazing. So yeah, a lot of great things coming on the Spawn front. So that's the secret origin of Spawn Daily. Sounds like something that's up your alley. Please subscribe. I was able to hit 500 subscribers, which was the threshold to monetize, but there does have to be a limited or a set number of hours that are watched on the channel as well before I can monetize. So you can either get to, just to give you a little peek behind the curtain, you can either get to 1,000 followers on YouTube for your channel, or you can get to 500 followers and have 3,200 hours of content consumed. People have watched that much content, and you can get monetized that way. So I'm above 500. I'm not close to 3,200 yet, but it will help if I can, start getting these Spawn dailies out on a regular basis. So anyway, that being said, please subscribe. It really, really helps out. I've never monetized the content before. I never want there to be a barrier entry. I'll never do a Patreon. I'll never do paid content in that way. I always want the content to be free for potential comic readers, so there's no barrier to entry to watch and to learn and to enjoy comics. So again, it really helps me out if you guys subscribe. Just go to YouTube, do a search for the Comic Source, and hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Leave some comments on past episodes of Spawn. Like I read every comment. I really do. Like there may come a time, kind of a double-edged sword, right? There may come a time where I'm so big, it would be nice to get there, I guess, where I can't read every comment and I can't reply. But right now I read every comment that people leave, and I frequently reply. It's fun to engage like that. So if you have thoughts about Spawn, particular episodes or issues or moments or what have you, yeah, feel free to leave some comments below. Really appreciate it. If you are listening to this on the podcast, on the audio only feed, that's perfectly fine. Maybe that's the way you prefer to enjoy your content. Maybe it's because you're driving and can't watch, whatever. Maybe you listen to it while you're jogging or falling asleep at night, whatever. I just appreciate that you're here and would appreciate the subscription for the podcast as well, if that's your preferred method of delivery for the content. Just go to wherever you get your podcast, whatever app or platform, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Again, both the YouTube channel as well as the audio feed have a lot more than just the daily Spawn, right? Like there's over 2,500 past episodes with interviews with creators. I do a lot of interviews, a lot of book reviews, previews of books before they come out, con coverage. There's just tons and tons of stuff. Now, going forward, I am putting everything on YouTube as well as on the podcast feed, just to try to continue to grow that audience. So again, if you're watching on YouTube and that's your preferred way to enjoy, you're not going to miss anything new that comes out because it will almost always be on YouTube. Even if I don't have graphics or video that's recorded, I'll put graphics, screenshots of the book and what have you. But there's a lot of the old content, like I said, 2,500 episodes that won't ever be on YouTube, just because I'm not going to go back and release that. Although I say that, but never say never. But anyway, if you're curious about a lot of the past episodes, they're only available currently as audio only. So appreciate the subscriptions, everybody. That way we can continue to grow the channel and hopefully defray some of the costs, because it's not cheap and it's only getting more expensive to produce the podcast. And this is not my job. I have a full-time day job, more than full-time, really. And so this is a hobby, and it gets to be pretty expensive at times. So it'd be great if I could help defray some of that cost. So anyway, appreciate that, everybody. Did not plan on going that long-winded to give the secret origin of the podcast, but again, appreciate that you're all here. let's go ahead and dive into the issue. Um, I guess before I do that, I should mention about I mentioned about the reading order. So I should probably talk a little bit about that before we dive into it. So as I said, the reading order from a gentleman named Blake Whitlow. It is a fantastic resource. There's a link in the show notes that you can go and click and check out the reading order. You can see where we are. You can see what we've read before. The only thing that it doesn't have that I kind of wish it does is where you could find the issues, where things might be reprinted or what have you. But either way, it's a great resource. It'll let you know what we've covered so far and what we have to cover going forward. And again, it's a chronological reading order, meaning that the earliest issues are kind of the furthest back events that happen, and then the newer or the most recent stuff is the stuff that's coming out now. And if something is a flashback or whatever, Blake will try to go back and put it wherever it fits in the timeline. So it's not a publishing order; it's an actual reading order, the order that you should read things. So again, with that being said, let's go ahead and kick it off and take a look at the issue. In this episode, we're actually going to be covering 3 issues because, like I said, when we do some of the series that aren't Spawn, we're going to be covering more than one issue per episode, and that's the case here. What's interesting, we're going to be talking about 3 issues of Curse of the Spawn, issues 26, 27, and 28. We've covered 29 already, which was the final issue of the series, but we're going to cover 3 that are pretty close to the end here. And what's interesting, although they tie together, and 27 and 28 are titled like part 1 and part 2 of the same story, they feel very self-contained in a way. I mean, they tie in very strongly, but at the same time, they all sort of have a separate focus on who the main character or characters are. And so in that way, that feels very different. I would almost say it's almost like watching a few episodes of like Law and Order, right? Like they tie in terms of you have like the same characters, and sometimes they have some stuff going on in their personal lives where that story, that plot thread could carry over from one episode to the next. But for the most part, they're one and done, right? They're procedurals, where they feel very, very separate. So that's kind of the case with these 3 issues of Curse of the Spawn, which I went back and forth. Like, do I want to cover all 3 in one episode, or do I want to divide them up into their own episodes? Because they do sort of stand on their own. So ultimately, just sort of for space reasons, I guess, I decided to do them all in one episode. Although it's going to make the episode a lot longer. Plus, I rambled on already for 20 minutes about the secret origin of Daily Spawn. So yeah, I'm going to be a little bit of a longer episode this time anyway. But let's dive in. Brother's Keeper is the first story, or the first issue. The story's by Alan McElroy, as all the Curse of the Spawn issues have been. Dwayne Turner is the penciler. Inks by a number of people here. We have Chance Wolfe. We had Todd McFarlane himself, Jonathan Glapion, Jason Fotos. Copy, editing, and lettering by Tom Orzechowski. Colors by Todd Broeker, Mark Nichols, and Drew Dog Hutchinson. And it's the first chance that we get to meet somebody very close to Al Simmons, somebody that I didn't even realize existed. And My Brother's Keeper is sort of a clue to that. But anyway, it kicks off. We've got this beautiful woman, as illustrated by Dwayne Turner. Her name is Margaret Etchins. She's some sort of mover and shaker in the business world of New York City. She's on her phone. She's talking to somebody, giving orders. I'm sure the dialogue here by McElroy, very much of its time in the 90s, but sort of set up to give us an idea that she's, take charge, take no prisoners, businesswoman, and she says, "Hey, sell the stock at this level at this time, and at 5 o'clock, and call me at 5:01. And if you screw anything up, you better buy yourself a toilet brush because that'll be your next job in the company." And yeah, just really kind of a no nonsense kind of person, right? Then we get a little background. There's a thumb there on the bottom of the screen, and I guess it's supposed to be, I don't know if they're like looking through a camera lens or something, but you can see the color's a little off, but he's definitely has his eyes on Margaret. Um, and you can tell his skin's kind of screwed up or whatever, and this person's got some ideas about society. He's kind of making a commentary. He says, death. There are those that loathe and conspire, those that seek to cut their own deals, um, forces beyond their understanding, and I'm ever laughing at the divine and degenerate comedy known as mankind. So whoever this person is, are they not a person? Are they not a man? They don't consider themselves part of mankind. Um, so anyway, Gretchen's in the back of this limo driving on the highway when her limo gets run off the road, basically. You can see there the big crash at the bottom. And it crashes at the bottom of this hill. And luckily enough, a tow truck is right there to pull up on the scene. And maybe this is fortuitous. This guy's going to be able to help out. But we find out that this man's name is Travis Quinn. He's the one in his tow truck that sent the limo to the bottom of the ravine. And he's got some terrible skin problems. And it was his thumb that we saw before. And we find out about his parents. They were fanatical religious people, and so they believed that he was cursed and used to beat on him and read scripture to him and actually carve scriptures into his back with butter knives. And the other children were very mean to him. They bullied him. They called him Crocodile. And so Travis, he learned of a way to deal with the pain. Unfortunately, it's not a very healthy way to deal with the pain. So Margaret wakes up in this garage of Travis Quinn, and he's got some instruments, I guess you'd say, that he's going to use to torture her. Says he's going to make repairs on her. So again, his parents were trying to repair him. He's going to try to do the same to Margaret. And obviously she's freaking out. She screams, "Get away from me." She doesn't know who he is. She's like, this can't be real. I must still be unconscious. This is a nightmare. I need to just wake up. But unfortunately, as much as she yells and screams, there is no waking up from the nightmare that is Travis Quinn. He is a monster. He is a serial killer, and he's going to have his way with Margaret. So very unfortunate for her. Meanwhile, we see Sam and Twitch visiting a sanitarium, the Fenton Sanitarium. They're there to talk to Dr. Carl Marsh about the disposition of a former patient. And so when they get a chance to talk to him, and they make some comments, they're not exactly political correct. Again, remember, this was the 90s. They make some comments about the state of the mental health for a lot of these people and what have you. But when they finally get a chance to talk to Dr. Carl Marsh, we find out that there's been a series of killings, right? There's been serial killings, and there is a former patient of his named Roger Bonner who was recently discharged, and this so-called crocodile killer, who we know to be Travis Quinn, but a lot of the things that the crocodile killer is doing, it's the doctor is afraid that the finger is going to point to Roger Bonner, and the police are going to go after him, but the doctor's convinced that it's not Roger, and he's willing to pay Sam and Twitch twice their usual fee to prove it. It's never quite clear why the doctor is so altruistic when it comes to Bonner. Maybe he's worried about his own reputation. Maybe he's worried about some kind of liability if Bonner is found liable or guilty of these murders, right? Like he's saying Bonner didn't do it, but yet they don't know who did it, and it might be easy for the police to just blame it on Bonner and say case closed, and then they're going to look to why was he released, if he wasn't cured, that sort of thing. And so the doctor wants to avoid that if possible, and obviously doesn't want the real killer walking around free. So It's not too long before the FBI shows up at the scene of the limo, and they pop open the trunk, and they find somebody else, not Margaret Etchins, but a Marcia Esterbridge, a restaurant heiress from Long Island. She's been missing almost 3 weeks, right? This is the agent in charge who looks and finds this, and they're taking pictures and what have you. So it almost seems like um, Travis Quinn orcharded this Marcia Esterbridge, killed her, and then when he went to get Margaret Etchins out of the limo that he ran off the road, he left Marcia's body behind. So obviously 3 weeks, killed 3 weeks ago, whatever, or missing 3 weeks. Her body's not in good shape. You see one of the cops vomiting there because it's so bad. Um, so he calls it in and says, hey, we need some help. We probably need a profiler, get somebody from DC, get somebody who's really good. And then the scene shifts to DC, and I thought maybe we're in a morgue when I first saw this because we're told it's a room filled with death. There's corpses and the stench of blood everywhere. But actually what we find out after we meet a man holding a gun, a man named Mark Simmons. Yeah, it turns out it's Al Simmons' brother. Al Simmons has a brother. His name is Mark, and he is a criminal profiler. So he's got his gun pulled out because there's this man dressed in an army uniform or military fatigues, and he's a serial killer himself. He's known as the unknown soldier. He doesn't believe in talk. He's the reason that there's a bunch of dead bodies, I guess you'd say, in this room. Hold on, let me see if I can. For some reason, it seems like I'm missing some of the pages here. I'll have to be a little more careful when I do the redactions in the future, I guess. Because it seems like I'm missing. There's a full page splash when we first see this unknown soldier that doesn't seem to be here. So apologies for that, everybody. And now the book is just flipping pages on its own. Sorry about that. Just seeming to flip pages on its own without me doing anything. See if I can get back to where we're supposed to be here. Okay, yeah, so following this page, there should be a one-page splash that says the serial killer called the unknown soldier doesn't believe in talk, and he's yelling at Mark Simmons, and he says, you see what I done to them others? This one gets his head blown off unless you and the feds pull back now. This is war. And we see on the next page where that you can actually see Mark saying, easy, I'll put my gun down. The war's over. You won. You took out the enemy. The rest are ready to surrender. And he calls them by his names, like Stephen Mitchell, you're a man who's ready to come home. You're decorated for your bravery. You killed them all. You killed all the enemy. There's no more enemies left. And it seems like Simmons is actually getting through to him. The unknown soldier's like, I killed him. All I did. I'm a hero. And he takes his finger away from the grenade pin because this hostage has a grenade stuffed in his mouth. And Simmons, or Stephen Mitchell, this serial killer, this unknown soldier, had his finger on the pin and was ready to pull out at any time. But as soon as he takes his hand away from the grenade, the backup that Mark Simmons has there, they all open fire. But maybe not the smartest thing. You got to figure a guy in military fatigues who's been through what this Mitchell guy's been through. He's wearing body armor. So he has time to recover and pull the pin. And obviously this guy freaks out. It's going to blow up in his mouth. Luckily, Mark Simmons is able to grab it from his mouth and toss it away. And he ends up having to dive for his gun because once Simmons saves the hostage from having his head blown off by a grenade, Mitchell yells, "You are the enemy. I see it now." And he's going to shoot him with his machine gun. Mark Simmons dives for his gun. He grabs it, shoots the guy in the face, headshot, which is probably what one of the other FBI guys, one of the other SWAT team, whoever they are, should have done instead of them all aiming center mass when the guy is wearing military fatigues. It makes sense he would have body armor on. And so Mark saves the day, but he doesn't really feel like he saved the day. He's not happy, right? Like the hostage is alive, the killer's finished, but as a trained psychotherapist, as a trained psychoanalyst, he feels like he failed. He should have been able to get through to this guy. Nobody should have died. Um, he just feels bad, like he didn't complete his job. He didn't do his job because basically this poor guy who was traumatized, I'm sure suffering from PTSD, what have you, lost his life. So maybe, in some karmic way he deserved it because he was a serial killer, but Mark doesn't feel that way. So as he's standing there lamenting this, there's a call that comes in for him. It's the director. They need him in New York right away. So come to find out, Mark is the guy that's going to go to New York. He's going to answer the call from that special agent in charge to try to hunt down this crocodile killer. So while he's on the plane, he's still thinking about the trauma that he suffered and how he's not always able to save everybody. He's thinking about the crocodile killer. He's read the file, the profile, the portrait of that guy's shaping up in his head. Then we see this woman who her skin's kind of messed up too. And she says, "Oh, the crocodile case looks tough. Must be forward to going to the Big Apple, seeing your ex-sister-in-law. It's too bad you couldn't save Mitchell. Now he's dead just like me, just another victim of your screw-ups and what have you." So it's and this woman's not actually sitting next to him. This is kind of in his mind. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a hallucination or a delusion, but it's something that he's doing to himself. It's some guilt that he's carrying around, that he's kind of torturing himself with this woman, giving him a bad time, even to the point where he calls out, "Shut up, leave me alone." And the other people on the plane are looking at him like, "Dude, what's your deal?" And so there's no one there, but again, the phantom pangs of guilt and New York awaits and all the memories that are going to come with that. So he's going to try to focus on the job because the job is all that matters. So when he shows up, special agent in charge, who's named Special Agent Litz, is at the airport to pick him up. And he says, "Hey, don't get me wrong. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad for your help, but I'm the one in charge. You're a consultant, nothing more. You got to do what I say." And Mark agrees to that, saying, "Fine. I just want to get the killer off the streets. And just so you know, I already have a name of the man you're looking for. He was just released as a patient from the Fenton sanitarium. He's a perfect match for the crocodile killer. His name is Roger Bonner." And so just what Dr. Carl Marsh was afraid of earlier in the issue that we had described to us is exactly the path that the investigation has taken. So we see Sam and Twitch on the next page. They are at the apartment of Roger Bonner. They're doing what the doctor hired them to do, which is go and take Bonner into protective custody, keep him out of trouble, because if they can show that a killing has taken place while Sam and Twitch were watching over Bonner, they can prove that it wasn't Bonner. But as much as Dr. Marsh wants to kind of vouch for Bonner, it's clear that the guy's got some problems still. There's like dead cats and rats hanging all over the walls. It smells awful. And Twitch is like, "What's going on here?" And Bonner's like, they're pretty, aren't they?" And so as they're standing there, the FBI does bust in. And Mark Simmons wants to know who they are. He says, "I'm Mark Simmons, forensic psychologist." And Twitch is like, "Simmons?" He's already starting to put two and two together. And they obviously want to know, what's going on, why they're there with Roger Bonner and what have you. So meanwhile, it seems like maybe the doctor's plan is going to work. I mean, I think Bonner still might be in some trouble for killing a bunch of cats and rats and stringing them up on the wall. But at least while he's there, while the FBI and Sam and Twitch and Bonner are all together, we see that Travis Quinn has struck again. He's got not only a mother, but also her two sons inside his truck with them. And Hallie and Ben and Jeffrey are their names. They're the McGregors. And we're told that Travis Quinn is going to have himself a busy night. And then, interestingly enough, it says to be concluded, which would tell me that the next issue is going to be the final issue, right? So again, it's so interesting. It's like the first book of the three we're going to talk about ties into the second one really, really well and sort of gives closure on this serial killer, Travis Quinn, um, even Mark Simmons type story. But then there's things that happen in the second book that you're going to see, the second issue we're going to talk about here in just a minute, that then tie in with the third one. So it's like of these three, 1 and 2 go together, and then 2 and 3 go together. But 1 and 3 don't go together. I mean, they don't not go together, but they're not specifically tied in together. So it's an interesting format, interesting structure that McElroy has chosen to use here. Don't know why he chose to do it this way, but yeah, it is sort of interesting. And if I ever get him on the show, which I have reached out to see if I could get him on the show, but I have never heard back. But if I ever get him on the show, it'll be one of the things I'll ask him about, like the choice to structure it this way. So anyway, up next we have Return of Suture, Part 1. So you're like, again, wondering, okay, the last issue just said to be concluded. How can this be a part 1? It's got to be like part 2 of that story. Again, it's kind of weird the way they did it. So anyway, Ghost is the title of the issue. Alan McElroy still handling the story. This time we've got Clayton Crain on pencils, inks by Chance Wolfe, Todd McFarlane, with a special thanks to Jonathan Glapion. Copy editor and lettering by Tom Orzechowski, colors by Todd Broeker and Mark Nichols. So as we kick off here, we see somebody named Damon Edward Foster. We're told he doesn't sleep. He only eats to sustain consciousness. His mind is an analytical whirlpool of ideas and what have you, and order takes shape in his mind. Chaos, out of chaos comes order, and he's in pursuit of human chaos made flesh. He's in pursuit of serial killers. He's in pursuit of perhaps a serial killer that we know, that we've seen before, by the name of Suture, because that is the name that he utters at the bottom of the page. Meanwhile, we see Mark Simmons. He's having a nightmare. He's having a terrible dream that he has all too often. It's a bleak replay, we're told, of goodbyes. He's saying bye to his son. He's saying bye to his wife as he leaves, and we're told he thrashes in his sleep. He sweats this mental struggle, thinking about how to change the very fabric of reality to prevent this catastrophe, to prevent the loss. Because we do see at the bottom of the page there that his family has been killed, whether it's a car accident, whether something else happened. We're not really sure. We see his son's toy plane in the foreground there, covered in blood. And obviously, Simmons is very distraught. And on the next page, it's like, no leads. That's not good enough. I want to know whoever killed them. It's my fault. They died because of me. I'm the Fed. I'm the one that somebody wanted to hurt. It's my fault. And he screams out my fault as he wakes up and looks at a picture of them that he keeps close by, saying that he's eventually he's going to find out who did it. He swears on his soul that he will. And on the next page, great montage piece here from Clayton Crain as Mark meets up with Wanda and they talk a little bit. They're catching up. They both kind of express some regret that they haven't stayed closer. They haven't stayed more in touch. But it's hard for Wanda because Mark reminds her so much of Al. And conversely for Mark, it's his, late brother's wife. So of course he's going to be thinking of his brother when he's around Wanda, and that hurts. Not to mention, he has the whole baggage of feeling guilty about the death of his wife and son that he's trying to focus on. And he says, "Yeah, I just wasn't really much of a people person, after they passed away." So, but they both sort of make their intentions known of trying to stay in closer contact going forward. We'll see if that's actually the case. Meanwhile, we see the gentleman we saw earlier open the book, this Damon Edward Foster. taking some photos, right? So we're like, wait, who's this guy? Why is he another serial killer? Why is he taking photos of Mark and Wanda? Like, what's going on there? So uh, Mark gets in the back of a cab. He's heading to the DC office when a car cuts off the cab that he's in, and we see this Damon Foster get out, and he tells Simmons, "Get out. You and me need to talk." And he actually flashes an FBI badge. So perhaps there's more to this Damon Edward Foster than we thought. He's actually not a killer. He's actually an FBI agent. Like, is that what's happening here? Is he in pursuit of one of these serial killers? So as he and Mark Simmons have a conversation, we find out that Damon Foster is actually a legend in the FBI. He's like, wow, you're the legend. You're the profiler's profiler. There's never a serial killer that you went after that you didn't catch. You're, a true manhunter, but then you up and quit without any explanation. And Foster says, I had my reasons, but I got to tell you, you got a problem. The man you got for the crocodile killings, Roger Bonner, that's not him. Your killer's actually this pathological bastard named Travis Quinn. And here's his address, and here's a map, so you don't get lost finding him. And Mark's like, okay, Travis Quinn, all right, I'll buy it. I believe you because, you were the best. But what do you want from me? Like, why are you giving me this information? Why don't you give it to somebody else? And Foster says, well, I'll tell you. And he takes him to this warehouse, takes him inside the warehouse they're parked outside of. And Simmons is like, what is this place? And he's like, look at the wall, Simmons. You see the names of all these victims? They're all serial killers. Rag dolls that were destroyed and patched back together. It's fascinating, right? Like all these toys, all these dolls that have been stitched back together, and all these pictures of dead serial killers. And Simmons is like, what are we dealing with here? What are we talking about? And Foster goes on to talk about Suture, the myth, the legend, the killer of killers, a woman who was once known as Gretchen Culver, until a serial killer named John Mabley drove her into the jaws of the abyss, right? And we know the story. We saw, we covered it previously when Gretchen was raped and murdered by New York City police officers. And Foster goes on to say, the ones who should have protected her were the ones that took away everything she was, right? And we see the little montage piece there at the top with the New York Police Department and all that. And so what Gretchen has become, she's risen from the ashes. She's become this magnificent creature. She hacks serial killers to pieces and then, reassembles them. And Foster calls her a feral, beautiful, jagged edge of death. That's how he describes Suture. And again, Foster might be the best, but Mark Simmons is a pretty good profiler too. And he's picking up on something here from Foster. And he's like, Foster, listen to yourself. You want to catch Suture? Why? You want to bring her to justice? Or is it something deeper because you hunt serial killers and now you're hunting a serial killer that kills other serial killers, and you're talking about who she was before she became Suture, and it almost seems like there's admiration in your voice for the way she hunts these killers down. Are you in some way like in love with this woman? Some like sick, perverted, and Foster's like, I don't want to hear it. Don't do that. Don't profile me. You're here to help me trap Suture. You're gonna. I know her. I studied her. I know her every kill. She's going to be coming for the crocodile killer next. Travis Quinn's going to be our bait, and we're going to catch her. And Mark's like, no, that is not the way we do things. Like, no, he just flat out refuses. And Foster's not having it, right? He pulls his gun out on Simmons. He goes, oh, you're going to help me. You're going to help me get Suture because I figured out who killed your wife and kid, your wife and son. And Travis like, Mark Simmons is like, wait, what? You need to tell me that right now. And Foster's like, slow your roll, man. Quid pro quo. That's not how this is going to work. You help me get what I want. You help me capture Suture, and you get the information you want. You find out who killed your wife and son. Do we have a deal? Well, you just offered Mark Simmons maybe the one thing that would get him to agree to something this egregious. He says, "All right, you better be telling the truth, Foster, for your sake." But yeah, I'll go along with it. So they head over to the garage, the repair shop, whatever you want to call it, where Travis Quinn is, and they see him there with the McGregors, tied up. And Mark saying that, if we're lucky, we can save these victims. And Foster's like, just remember, we're here for Suture. Like, keep your priorities straight. And I'm like, I'm reading this, I'm thinking, Foster, dude, I agree with Mark. You've gone off the deep end, like saving innocent lives. Like, I get that you want to catch Suture. Suture only kills other serial killers. So if she gets away with killing this Travis Quinn and the family lives, that's where the priority should be. But again, it's clear that Foster's really obsessed with Suture for, reasons, whatever reason. And he tells Simmons, he's like, yeah, I've studied her. I know that she never lets the body count, a killer's body count, get over a certain number. And Travis Quinn just hit that limit. And you got to think, it's like, Foster, did you let the crocodile killer keep killing to get to that limit? Because Suture's going to show up for him? Like, dude, you're not pulling the trigger. You're not stabbing these people. You're not the one doing the killing, but you're not stopping them. You're not saving them either. Yeah, definitely not. Like, Foster's got some issues for sure. He's no crocodile killer. But he's only one step, maybe two steps below being a serial killer for himself, letting all these innocent people die. So pretty bad choices. And Simmons is going along with it, almost as bad, but obviously because of his obsession with finding out who killed his wife and son. So we go inside, we see Travis Quinn. He's doing his shtick, he's saying all kinds of wild and crazy stuff, getting ready to kill some more people, talking about, soulless anguish and all that sort of stuff. And Foster is continuing to fill Mark Simmons in on how he knows that Suture's going to show up. Says she always strikes when the killers are at their most vulnerable, when their serotonin and endorphin levels are peaking. It's their weakest moment. And in that moment is when they'll be able to hopefully take him down. So they sneak into the garage, and Mark sees one of the victims tied up, and he says, I'm going to go for the victim and try to save him. And again, Forster's telling him, no, don't do that. You screw this up and the deal's off. I'm not going to tell you who killed your wife and son. His priorities are all out of whack. And so, but because of that conversation, because of Forster yelling out no, it does attract the attention of Travis Quinn. And as quick as Forster is trying to run away, he gets stabbed with it looks like a piece of rebar that he gets stabbed with right through the midsection, and that leaves Mark to face the man mountain that is Travis Quinn. I mean, this guy's huge and strong and mentally ill, probably doesn't feel pain or whatever. And Mark even thinks to himself, God, this is a big son of a bitch. His blood is pumping, his adrenaline is up. I got to try to talk him down. I got to stay focused. I got to figure out, what he's up to. Think about what drives him. He's got a tow truck. It's auto body shop. I think repairs. And, he's trying to reach him. He's like, so, Quinn, I got a job for you, human salvage, somebody that needs a lot of work, right up your alley, what have you. And Quinn's like, I picked my jobs, not you. And as he says that, he yanks a chain, and there's a motor, an engine for a car that's suspended above Mark Simmons, and he tries to jump out of the way, but his legs are pinned underneath, even as his gun goes clattering away as well as he tries to leap out of the way of this engine block that's falling on him. So Travis Quinn's got both of these guys now right where he wants them. And he says, well, you know what? Maybe I was being a little hasty earlier. I was trying to run you guys off. I could cut both of you up. There's a great black market for body parts. south of the border, heart, kidney, liver, all that. Um, and in other parts of the world, there's parts of the body that are considered a delicacy, better than shark fin soup. Um, and so, yeah, maybe that's what he's going to do. And he's holding this fire axe, and things are not looking good for Forster and Mark Simmons. So Simmons is trying to stretch out and reach his gun while uh, Forster, who's pinned against the wall, is about to get chopped up, basically, by Travis Quinn. But just as he is about to swing his axe, Foster catches a glimpse, this flash of death, if you will, and it's what Foster was hoping for. An apparition made of sewn flesh and polished steel. Suture has shown up. And Travis Quinn, she strikes so quickly. Travis Quinn doesn't even see anything until it's much too late. And you can see his hands are chopped off there, still holding onto the axe. And then we get a look at Suture the next day, or then on the next page rather. And she's saying that the devil's going to drag you under, and he's screaming, "No, I'm not done. I still have much work to do, so many repairs to make. Who's going to fix everybody? It has to be me." And again, it's that psychosis that he has, right? Like he always thought there was something wrong with him because that's what his parents basically led him to believe by saying he was cursed, by carving the scriptures into his back, by torturing him. That's what they taught him. People need to be fixed. People are messed up, and the way you fix them is by torturing them. I mean, it's awful when you think about it. So he tries to escape. He runs to the door. He's trying to open it with his bloody stumps because he doesn't have hands anymore. It's really quite sad and creepy and gross all at the same time. He's yelling, "Let me out, let me out." And Suture comes over saying, "Do you know what it means do you know what I see when I look at you? Travis, roadkill." And she chops his head off. She says, "But that's all right. I can mend what's broken." And we know she will, right? Like she'll sew him back up and probably string him up and leave him for the cops to find. Um, and meanwhile, Foster's calling out to Suture saying, "Look at me, please." And Simmons is like, forget her. She's a monster. All she cares about is death. All she cares about is killing. Now, who killed my wife and son? You got to tell me. You got to tell me who killed my family, because he knows that Foster's not long for the world, right? Like he got stabbed through the chest with a piece of rebar. And now that the threat of Travis Quinn's gone, all Mark Simmons cares about, hey, give me the information you promised. But unfortunately, Foster passes away, and it leaves Mark Simmons without the answers to who killed his family. So police show up, emergency vehicles show up. Mark Simmons is lamenting the fact he did not find out who killed his family, saying, "I was so close to an answer. Yvonne, Trey, I feel like I let you down again. I should have made Foster tell me sooner." And then he's thinking about Foster. He's like, man, all those years of hunting killers and seeing through their eyes, and he actually falls in love with a killer that kills other killers. He hunts her down, searching for something that's missing inside himself, in his own life. And she doesn't even notice him or pay any attention to him. Like what are we looking for out there? Are we looking for truth? Are we looking for answers? And again, the Mark Simmons, like the disillusionment is setting in, right? Like the whole reason he went along with this thing that this plan of Foster's that he knew wasn't right was because of the promise he made to bring his wife and son's killer to justice. But you wonder, how this is affecting him. So close to an answer, and then it's pulled away from him. And a guy who he looked up to, he even says, "Foster was my hero when I was at Quantico. I wanted to be just like him. Maybe I already am," which is a horrible thing to think about, because Foster did a really, really bad thing. He let innocent people be killed. He didn't give Mark the answers that he promised, whether he even knew them or not. And at the end of the day, he was trying to have a relationship, it seemed like, with a serial killer. But as I said, Suture, as she often does, stitched the body of Travis Quinn back together, stitched that serial killer back together. And we see him strung up there with some final thoughts from Mark Simmons on the page that as far as the crocodile murders case closed, give Quinn credit. He was a good agent. Um, or he says, I'll give Quinn the credit. Um, he saved, and I think it's supposed to be, I'll give Foster the credit. He was a good agent. He saved dozens of lives over the years. But yeah, there's a typo there. It says I'll give Quinn credit. Now he means he's going to give Foster the credit um, for finding out, and he should, because it was Foster that figured out that it was Travis Quinn. But as for Suture, she remains on the FBI's top 10 list, right? Top 10 most wanted. Yeah, they still want to track Suture down, even though she's killing other serial killers. Still not allowed to go out and murder people. So take that for what you will. And she was a very beautiful woman, as depicted when she first showed up. Nowadays, not so much. But of course, Foster, whatever made him a great profiler, whatever it was in him that allowed him to get in the minds of killers or whatever, whatever that part of him was somehow attracted to Suture, and not necessarily in terms of like physical looks or whatever, because I don't know that anybody really. I mean, I guess you have that footage from the police station where she showed up the first time, but I think it was more like a philosophical attraction for Foster. But yeah, the fact that Suture didn't even look at him, like how how sad. What a sad way to go for Foster. So anyway, like I said, final issue here. And on the cover, let me go back to the cover real quick. It says Return of Suture Part 2, even though that's not what it says inside in terms of the book. So again, first issue doesn't have Suture. Second issue does. Third issue does. So that the second and third tie in with Suture, but the first issue has Mark Simmons and the second one has Mark Simmons. This third one doesn't. So yeah, this again, interesting transition the way McElroy structured it here. But he is the writer. Once again, pencils are by Clayton Crain, inks by Chance Wolfe and Todd McFarlane, with special thanks to Jonathan Glapion. Copy editing and lettering by Tom Orzechowski. And then we've got colors by Todd Broeker and Jay Fotos. So as we get into this book, we see it's raining in New York. There's some gargoyles. The rain is splashing on. It's a world of dread, we're told. Fearful lives living inside towering tombstones. Very cynical way of thinking of New York. And on top of one of the buildings next to one of the gargoyles, we see Suture in the rain. Incredible splash page from Clayton Crain here. She's looking down on the city, very Batman-like in a way. And she says, within all this, within this city, what am I? What have I become? It seems like she's suffering a little bit of a identity crisis. It's like, I stare at my hands at times. They're clean. Other times they're stained with blood. The blood runs through my fingers. The blood stains my stitches. Blood that was spilled in the name of justice, because again, we know she just kills serial killers. She's killing murderers who maim and slaughter others. But is she doing it to satisfy some inner demon that she has? Is it darkness met with greater darkness? Is this any kind of life to lead? Like, again, she really seems to be having this like existential crisis, trying to figure out why she does what she does. And what's even worse is sometimes the memories come back. And she says the memories are like icicles driven into my spine. They haunt my every fiber like a spider crawling behind my eyes, which, damn, that imagery, man. Spiders crawling behind her eyes. And we get a glimpse there in those middle panels of what she's seen in her mind's eye. And it's those police officers that raped her. But they're demonic like. It's just awful. And you can't kill memories like you can kill another serial killer. It says I can't kill them. The memories, I can't take them away, at least not alone. So then the scene shifts. We meet Dr. Ian Sanders, who has a beautiful wife, a beautiful life, an exquisite seaside home on Long Island. He's got multiple degrees in psychiatry and psychotherapy. He's got a national radio show where people call in, listened to by millions. Really seems like he has it all. He's got his own practice. He's very well respected, but he also has a secret. And we see him pull into this storage unit, calls his wife saying, I'm running late. Sounds great. I'll see you soon. We're told he's a skeleton keeper in a way. And when he goes into his storage unit, as one might suspect, he is a serial killer. He's keeping the heads of the people he's killed. He's putting on lipstick. He's dressing in women's clothing. Yeah, the guy is not all there. And we're told that he has killed 22 men and women. And he's talking to one of the heads, the severed heads there, saying, oh, how I've missed you all, my babies, my loves. So on the next page, as we see him uncovering the rest of his babies, the rest of the severed heads that he's collected in his spree of murdering, we see that Suture shows up, surprises him. He says, "Oh my God!" She's like, "Doctor, not even close," and throws him aside and says, "Doctor, heal thyself." Right, very cliched saying. And as he comes to in her loft, I guess we'll say, her dwelling, she's voiced over, she's talking to him saying, time to awaken, the curtains have been thrown open, the sun's shining down on your damnation. I know who you are. It's been on the news and the papers. You're the head hunter. You decapitate your victim. You do unspeakable things to their remains. You leave no traces behind. Obviously, some of that is probably due to his medical training that has been able to evade capture up to this point. She says, Suture says the FBI and NYPD have no leads, but all the evidence they need is in that you store it, right? You've kept all the heads as trophies. Each one of them is a free ticket to a steel room where they'll drop the pellets, and there's no ventilation. And obviously, she's referring to the gas chamber. She's threatening to expose him in a way, and he says, "No, keep away from me. Let me out of here." But there is no escape. The doors are locked. They're very high up. You can't, escape out the window or what have you. And so once he realizes there's no escape, he says, I know who you are too. You're the legendary killer of killers. Suture. I prayed you were just a myth, an urban legend. Why did you bring me here? Why didn't you just kill me in the garage? Because again, he knows, as probably a lot of serial killers know, that Suture is the killer of killers. And she says, I'm tired of bloodshed. I'm tired of killing. I don't know what I am anymore. Am I the person I was? Am I Gretchen? Am I something else? Will I ever get my life back? I feel like I'm at the mercy of something dark and terrible inside me. Doesn't want to let me go. And there's pain in every stitch. And I wonder if it's backlash because I'm continuing to kill. And slipping back into that role of a psychotherapist, the doctor's like, go on, I'm listening. But while he's doing that, he's actually reaching for a 2x4 to try to hit her over the head and so he can escape. Of course, she's, 3 steps ahead of him, knocks him on his ass again, and says, it's very simple. I'm now your patient. You're going to cure me of the disease that is my existence. I want to be whole again. And isn't that what you do as a doctor? You make people whole. I'm giving you just 24 hours to cure me of this nightmare. You've got 2 choices: a painful death at my hands, or I turn you over to the police. But if you cure me, I'll let you go. If you can live through this, you can go forth and kill no more, and I'll give you your life back. And the doctor's like, cure you in 24 hours? Like, that's impossible. And she smacks him upside the head. She's like, try, damn you. So it's clear that she's, as much as she's this avenging angel, she's also still struggling. And that's what we saw in those first couple of pages, right? Where she was wondering, who am I? What am I? What have I become? So the doctor says, all right, we can, try this. Let's start at your earliest memory. Tell me who you were. And she thinks about how hard it was at first, but then it came faster and faster life and times of Gretchen Culver. She told this doctor, Ian Saunders, more about herself than she's ever told anybody. Just this torrent of memories, powerful and frightening. Um, and the doctor, to his credit, is doing the best that he can to try to help her. Um, and he actually discovers some things. He says, um, as Gretchen, she was never allowed to live her own life. She was pushed by her parents, um, who wanted to sort of have her as something they could brag about, right? Her parents wanted to be the next Kennedys, and they wanted to be envied and worshipped, and so she was just a means to an end, right? She never made her own choices. Even her fiance um, was something that she didn't choose for herself. It was all about wealth and prestige, and Gretchen was nothing but a tool. Um, and so having all of that thrust upon her is painful. But as the truth is revealed, um, she starts thinking that Gretchen was more of a puppet, more of a rag doll than anything that Suture is. Um, and the doctor says, "Yeah, you need to make peace with who you are. It's only been as Suture that you finally are making your own decisions. You finally are living your own life. As Gretchen, you were really a living nightmare. You're living for others instead of yourself. But now you can make your own destiny." Um, and Suture says, "So you're saying as Gretchen, I was dead emotionally and spiritually, but now I'm alive?" And the doctor says, "Yeah, you're reborn. You're a symbol. Gretchen died because you were too much like all of us, too caught up in the rat race or whatever. But now you're reborn. You have a chance to show us the truth," which really, when you think about it, there's a lot of truth to that. To saying Suture's sort of uninhibited or unaffected by any kind of ideas of wealth or fitting in or social conventions. Um, she does what she thinks is right in terms of bringing killers to justice and balancing the scales of justice and what have you. Um, and she's not beholden to anybody. And so um, she says, "Well, what now?" And Saunders says, "Well, that's up to you." And so she says those words again: "Go home, Saunders, and kill no more. If you do, I'll be waiting." Um, and she thinks to herself that since the first time she opened her eyes, since she stared into the face of Odessa, who's kind of the old woman who sort of unlocked Suture's powers, she feels directed, she feels renewed, she feels reborn. And whether or not we see Suture again, I guess remains to be seen. So Saunders, for him, the nightmare's at an end. He skirted death's edge, right? Because for the first time ever, Suture's met a serial killer and not killed that serial killer. Um, and she thinks about the words that Suture told him, "Go forth and kill no more." He says, "Yes, I think I can do that. I can remake myself. I can kill no more." He thinks he can let go of the darkness that he has inside him, because he's really lucky to be alive. So in a lot of ways, this is sort of a chance for him to put his past behind him as well and move forward. And as he arrives home, um, and opens the door and he sees his wife there, Ian, like, surprised to see him. He's like, what's wrong?" She's like, "Well, when you didn't call, you didn't come home. I called the police and they traced your car to this storage unit in Brooklyn, and the police are there to arrest him." So even though Suture didn't turn him in, because he was missing, because the police went looking for him, found his car that led them to the storage unit that was in his name or whatever. And his wife, doesn't want to believe it. "It's not true. Tell him it can't be true. It can't be true." And he's there sobbing on his knees, "Go and kill no more. God forgive me. What have I done?" So it wasn't Suture that did it, but the guy got his comeuppance anyway. And so we get one last look at Suture. She's looking out over the city again. She's saying, I see it all differently now. The people who were as I was, she sees them sort of as the living dead, right? They've got this um, mask over their eyes in a lot of ways. Their eyes aren't open to the truth of seeing the world. Um, they're focused on things that don't matter, like money and material wealth and what have you. And she's thinking, how do I bring them back to life? How do I save them from themselves? Save them from joining that rat race, from caring about the things that don't matter. And she thinks, well, I guess time will tell, time and my destiny, and I'll know when it's time for me to act. This is finally a life that I've chosen. And we get another fantastic splash page like we had with her in the rain early on, looking out over the city. This time, the sun is breaking over the clouds. Very almost exact opposite of what we saw in those early pages with the rain pelting down on the gargoyle, what have you. We have some white doves here, and again that light beginning to spread from sunrise. So really fantastic imagery from Clayton Crain there. So that's how this comes to an end. As I said, interesting story structure that McElroy chose to use here, with the first issue that we talked about and the second issue that we talked about being linked, and then the second and the third being linked. There are some ties between the first and third, but not really, right? And then him saying in that first issue that story was to be concluded in the next, but the second issue is part one of a story of which the third issue is part three. The first two issues with Mark Simmons, Al Simmons' brother. Second two issues of the three with Suture, no Mark Simmons, no Suture in the first one. Again, really interesting structure. I think Curse of the Spawn is a really underrated Spawn series. Now, he doesn't show up. Certainly Al Simmons doesn't show up, and I don't know if he shows up in any of them. It's sort of a different versions of Spawn, and then obviously in these three issues we get no Spawn at all. We get Spawn's brother, we get Suture, who's shown up in Spawn issues before, or maybe it was the Sam and Twitch series. I can't remember, but anyway, interesting characters, interesting series. I think McElroy is a tremendous writer. I wish he'd done more comics work, and obviously we have some fantastic artists, right? And Dwayne Turner and Clayton Crain, legendary pencilers. So really cool, really interesting story here. And again, recommend Curse of the Spawn because I think it's an underrated tangential Spawn series. So I appreciate you guys all joining me. As always, don't forget to subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave some comments below. Really appreciate it. Again, just trying to get to that point where I can monetize some content. Don't forget to follow us on social media as well. Links in the show notes to all of that. So we appreciate you joining as always, and we will talk to you next time.